The single most effective way of growing, holding, attracting, and hopefully harvesting deer on your property is through the use of food plots. And when we think about food plots, we want to try to shoot to have between 5 and 10% of our property in food plots. We arrived at that number over 25 years of being in business. We realized that with normal deer densities, if you have less than 5% of your property in food plots, there probably will come a time when you're going to run out of food, and as a result, your deer are going to leave, or you're going to lose your deer to neighboring property. So try to have between 5 and 10%, and of that 5 to 10%, you want to break that up into perennials. So about half of your plots should be in perennial species, like our trophy clover mix that has clovers and chicory in it. That's going to be the basis for your program. That's going to provide the whole deer family the high protein, high energy diet that they need spring, summer, and fall for growing antlers and for growing large bodies. But you don't want to forget about the rest of the year. You want to have a year-round program. So you need to have late fall and winter species also. Species like our slam dunk or our honey hole or our fall, winter, spring. Even our red zone that contain high energy food sources that are going to be more sought after by the deer in the late fall and the winter months. By doing that, you're going to have a year-round program, and you're going to offer the deer on your property everything they need for maximum antler growth and maximum body growth and overall health. What I want to talk about is really 7 easy steps on how to plant a food plot. We're going to talk about the importance of testing your soil, specifically for the pH of the soil. We're going to talk about conditioning your soil through the use of liquid soil conditioners and eliminating weeds. We're going to talk about the importance of liming, fertilizing, tilling, seeding your plot, and then lastly maintaining your plot through mowing and or liquid fertilizers. Now, the first step in planting food plots is taking a soil test, and what we're really looking for there in a soil test is the pH level of the soil. That's the environment that the plants have to live in. So we actually offer an instant pH soil test kit. It's a do-it-yourself, and what I did here is I went and I got a soil sample out of the field that we're in, added an equal amount of distilled water to it. You must use distilled water when using this kit. Broke off a stir stick from a nearby tree, stirred this, and this has been sitting here for about 15 minutes. And now I'm going to take one of the litmus strips that we get from a soil lab, dip it in here, shake it off, and then I'm going to compare this to the color chart that we provide. And this is probably, looks to be about a 5.5. And now there's another chart here that'll tell you how many pounds or tons of lime you're going to need to add to your plot to bring your pH up to a 6.5 or a 7. So that's the first step, and very, very important step. So the second step in planting a food plot is trying to eliminate the weeds. I'm in an area here that we've got quite a bit of vegetation growing, and if I don't eliminate these weeds, even if I disc them up or tilled them up, they're probably going to come back and create competition for the plants that we want to grow. So what I'm going to do, I've got a little backpack sprayer. I've already put a glyphosate or Roundup in here along with some water, and I'm going to add a product called Plot Max to it. The Plot Max is a soil conditioner that basically raises the pH of the soil, helps the soil retain moisture, raises the organic matter, which basically is a measure of the overall health of the soil, and really, in a nutshell, what it does is it creates the most fertile environment for seeds to start growing and for plants to thrive. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to spray this area. We're going to have to wait 7 days then for the Roundup to do its thing, and then we're going to start putting some lime down and fertilizer down. We'll be good to go. So the third step in planting a food plot is applying lime, if you need to. We took a soil sample, we know we need to apply lime, now we're going to go about doing it. It's very, very important. What lime does is raise the pH to create the proper environment for plants to thrive. If we don't do that and we neglect or ignore liming and we plant something that needs a high pH, and unfortunately most things that we want to plant for deer need a high pH, basically a neutral, a 7.0 pH. So if we ignore that and go ahead and plant anyway, we're going to be very, very disappointed with the results, because we're asking plants to thrive in an environment they can't thrive in. So we need to apply lime. We can buy it by the 50-pound bag, buy barn lime. Pelletized lime comes either in bulk or in 50 pounds. Pelletized lime is going to be more expensive, but you use about half the rate, and it breaks down and raises the pH much, much faster than barn lime. Or if you're fortunate enough to be in an agricultural area and you can get a dump truck into your plot, you can get bulk lime spread, and that's going to be very inexpensive, and obviously you're not going to have your labor involved in doing that. Irregardless of the method, make sure you get it done. Do not skip this step. So the next step, basically the fourth step in planting a food plot, would be to apply our fertilizer. We need to put our lime down and our fertilizer down prior to tilling so that we work them into the soil, so that when the seeds germinate and the root starts growing, there's plant food available for that plant. So it's important also to marry up the type of fertilizer with the type of plot that you're planting. There's basically going to be three numbers involved in it that identify fertilizer. The first is nitrogen, your second is phosphorus, and the final number is potassium. For example, legume type species like clovers, alfalfas, soybeans really need a lot of potassium. So if we use a high nitrogen fertilizer on a clover plot, all we're doing is encouraging grasses and weeds to grow, because that's what grasses and weeds thrive on, is nitrogen. So make sure you read the label on the seed that you're going to use, and virtually all seed companies are going to suggest the type of fertilizer that you want to use for your plot. So we're on to step 5. So basically in the tillage procedure, what we're trying to do is trying to disturb or loosen up as much ground as possible. And bear in mind, anything you can do to loosen up the ground and will allow more seeds to germinate and sprout and eventually grow and be successful plants. So, you know, if you don't have equipment available, you might want to use a steel garden rake. And granted, I'm kind of aggressive, but I don't think I'd want to do a half-acre plot with a steel garden rake. But nonetheless, anything you can do, perhaps using a drag section behind a four-wheeler, or a small disc behind a four-wheeler, or in this scenario here, I'm going to use a large disc behind this tractor or tiller. But anything you can do to disturb the top, hopefully 6 inches of soil, would be awesome. It would be great. All right, in step 6, now we go on to planting. We've done our tilling, we've fertilized, we put down lime, we put down our soil conditioner, killed the weeds, we're ready to plant. What we're gonna do is plant a little strip of our Antler King Trophy Clover mix here. I disc the area up, and if you step out into that plot after you've disked, I sink down about 3 inches. Okay, so I'm gonna need to firm up that soil. If I just broadcast the seeds and drug over them, or even cultipacked over them before I firmed up the soil, I'm gonna bury these seeds too deep. These are tiny, they have to be less than a 1/4 inch deep. So our next step here is going to be to cultipack to basically firm up the soil. We're going to broadcast the seed and then cultipack over one more time to basically get good seed to soil contact. And that's all we're going to need to do. If rain was in the forecast, you know what? I would broadcast this stuff after cultipacking and walk away, let the rain work it in. But in this case, we don't have rain coming for a week, so we're going to cultipack, broadcast, and cultipack. Now with some of the larger seeds, like our red zone for example, seeds are much larger, and what we can do there is broadcast them and then drag over them with like a spike tooth drag, or you can actually use a drill also. So those seeds can be up to 1 inch deep. So just bear in mind when you're planting to keep in mind the size of the seed and not to get the seeds too deep. One thing to keep in mind when you are broadcast spreading seed, for example, our trophy clover mix, the seeds are tiny, and 7 to 8 pounds is the seeding rate per acre. Okay, an acre, bear in mind, an acre is basically a football field. So we're only putting down approximately 8 pounds of seed on a football field. So just barely crack open your seeder, go over that whole area, go over your whole plot, and take a seed inventory. If you got more seed left, go over it again. If you still have seed left, maybe you could open that setting up one more click. But if you have it wide open, you're going to be out of seed before you get across a tenth of the size of your plot. So basically we're on the 7th step. We've planted our plots are up and growing. What do we do with them now? In the case of annual crops like corn or soybeans, brassicas and so on, we really don't want to do anything as far as mowing them. We want to encourage their growth. So basically what you can do is you could spray them with a liquid fertilizer like our Jolt. We realize that few people can plant 5 to 10% of their property in food plots. So we've developed Jolt to stimulate growth. This has been developed to provide plants food for a 30-day period. So once the plants are up and growing, we'll spray these plots once every 30 days and we can really maximize the tonnage on each and every food plot. In the case of a perennial mix like our trophy clover mix with the chicory, I've got some grasses coming up in here. So I can either mow these when they get to be a certain height, or if I see the clover starting to flower, I definitely will mow them. If I want to get rid of these grasses, what I can do is, what we've got going here is we've got a grass killer in this sprayer. Specifically, we'll only kill grasses. We're going to add Jolt to it. And in one pass, Mike is going to get rid of the grasses and fertilize the clover, so we'll get maximum growth out of this particular plot and get rid of those grasses. So pretty simple, but very, very cost effective, and it's a great way to stimulate the tonnage on each and every plot. All right, we finished up. Remember those 7 steps. We took a soil test, and what we were primarily interested in was the pH level of the soil. We put a soil conditioner down along with a glyphosate or a Roundup to kill the weeds. We applied our lime, applied our fertilizer, tilled that soil up, planted it, and then after those crops up, we maintained it. Either mowed them if they were perennial, sprayed the weeds that were in them if they were perennial, or fertilized them, or did all of the above. So our goal at Antler King is to provide products and service to make you guys successful. Any questions, visit our website at www.antlerking.com or give us a call, 715-284-9547. There's one last segment we want to share with you, and that's what if you don't have any equipment available at all to plant a food plot? All right, I had mentioned that all is not lost if you don't have equipment. And so I'm in an area here I can't get equipment into. The logging road is just too narrow in order for me to get my tractor and disc in here. What I'm going to do, I've loaded up my sprayer with Roundup, loaded it up with Plot Max. I'm going to spray all the existing vegetation. Then I'm going to wait a week to let the Roundup kill all these plants. Come back in, and I'm going to broadcast our No Sweat, which is the most user-friendly mix that we have ever developed. It's a mixture of perennials and annuals, so we can get a couple years, maybe even up to 3 years out of this plot. So I'm going to wait a week, come in and broadcast spread the No Sweat. As the existing vegetation dies, it's going to fall back down to the ground and form a mulch, and this No Sweat will come right up through there. Once the No Sweat plants emerged, then I'll come in and hit it at least every month with Jolt. And you will be absolutely amazed what you can do, what you can accomplish without any equipment at all.